Thank you for joining us for this look at some of the best stories from KPBS News this week. I'm John Carroll. Coming up, a painful budget season comes to a close. Details on the spending plan approved by the San Diego City Council as it tries to minimize cuts to services. Tuning into The Res, see how a small radio station in North County serves the Native American community. And a new partnership for local health care, what patients need to know as Sharp teams up with Tri-City. We start with an update on how ICE is changing its tactics for immigration enforcement. Part of that includes targeting people coming out of immigration court. Gustavo Solis has more on the broader legal strategy to increase deportations.
Is there a judicial warrant?
When ICE agents began arresting people in San Diego's immigration court, local immigration lawyers were not surprised.
We had heard about this happening in other cities, and we were kind of just waiting for our turn. We knew it was coming.
So they mobilized. Tracy Crowley was one of them. On May 22nd, she rushed to the Edward J. Schwartz Federal Building in downtown San Diego and represented a Colombian man seeking political asylum.
He can't go back home. He's in danger at home, and that's why he's here. He had filed his asylum application. He had attended every single court hearing. And he was doing things the right way because he is an attorney in Colombia and knows how important it is to fulfill your legal obligations if you want the benefit of being in a new country.
Even though Crowley says the man obeyed the law and showed up to his hearing, ICE agents arrested him when he walked out of the courtroom. Immigration lawyers say this is an example of a new tactic in the Trump administration's mass deportation strategy. It involves funneling people into fast-track deportation hearings known as expedited removals. Ginger Jacobs is an immigration lawyer with more than 20 years of experience.
So it's very unusual. That's why it's getting a lot of attention. The strategy is that the Department of Homeland Security attorney, who's considered like the prosecutor in the case, makes a motion to the judge, and I think most of the motions were oral, from what I could tell, saying we would like to terminate proceedings. We would like to dismiss all charges against this person. Now, normally we would think, as an immigration attorney, you would think that's a good thing. Hey, your client's out of immigration court proceedings. Yay, now you can maybe move on to pursue another form of relief.
But that is not what's happening. By terminating cases, Jacob says that the federal government can then rearrest immigrants who have been in the country less than 2 years and try to deport them without a formal hearing.
But the reason that they were trying to terminate cases was that if the case was terminated, if the person was not under the court's jurisdiction, then they were being subjected to expedited removal proceedings, which is a form of removal that does not involve a judge.
Under expedited removal, immigrants have far fewer rights. They don't get a lawyer. And instead of a hearing by an impartial judge, they are interviewed by a Department of Homeland Security employee. Lawyers say that this strategy is a way to avoid giving immigrants due process. It is exactly what immigration lawyer Adriana Sarkis says ICE tried to do to one of her clients.
It seems that they're targeting people who have been in the United States for under 2 years because they're able to put them in expedited removal proceedings instead of waiting for the entire process to reach the end.
Sarkis opposed ICE's motion to dismiss her case, so the client was not put into expedited removal. But he was still arrested and sent to the Otay Mesa Detention Center, where more than 80% of all detainees do not have a criminal record. Crowley and other immigration lawyers say that these cases undercut the Trump administration's claim that they're focusing on murders, rapists, and other violent criminals.
They said they only wanted to go after the criminals and the people doing bad things in the community, and they've said that since the beginning, that that's their priority. They're not going to find those people going to court. Like, those people are not there. They blew off their court dates.
ICE did not respond to a request to comment on these criticisms. Crowley hopes that these cases have at least one silver lining, that they lead to a change in public opinion about immigration issues.
I think people prefer this to be under the rug and outside of their field of vision, but now that it's in their field of vision, maybe people will get behind comprehensive immigration reform that treats people with respect and dignity.
Recent polling shows that just over 50% of Americans still approve of Trump's immigration policy, but it is a slight drop from February. Gustavo Solis, KPBS News.
Another tactic in Trump's crackdown is a new travel ban that took effect this week. The latest restrictions include more countries than we saw during Trump's first term, and like we saw in 2017, it's drawing protests. Alexander Nguyen shows us one of those demonstrations.
As international travelers from Japan arrived in San Diego, they were met with protesters.
We say no ban!
Against the Trump administration's latest travel ban.
Racist ban against Muslims and African countries.
The ban went into effect Monday and applies to 12 countries and also imposes heightened restrictions on 7 others. Afghanistan, where thousands await U.S. resettlement, is included in the ban. Mumtaz Moman has been trying to bring his family and fiancé from Afghanistan here for several years.
It's abuse of power. They're systematically, attacking the refugees, vulnerable people. And I'm one of them, even though I have citizenship. For this government, my citizenship doesn't mean anything.
Moman is frustrated because he's met with roadblock after roadblock.
It took a little bit longer than it was. So the first one was the travel ban, right? And then there was before care team. The care team got canceled.
When President Donald Trump announced the ban, he said it was a way to protect the United States.
The strength of the restrictions we're applying depends on the severity of the threat posed. The list is subject to revision based on whether material improvements are made, and likewise, new countries can be added as threats emerge around the world.
The people at the rally say the travel ban isn't about safety, but rather it is a racist policy meant to attack and punish immigrants.
It is racist because it only includes Muslims and Black Africans and brown people from South America. And it is un-American because it goes against the principles and the values and the foundations of the United States of America.
Imam Taha Hassan and the rest of the people at the rally are calling on local congressional delegates to pass the No Ban Act, which limits the president's power to enact travel bans. Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
Students and people just starting their careers are also getting caught up in the politics of immigration. SciTech reporter Thomas Fudge has more on the brain drain effect and what it means for the U.S. and other countries.
Skilled foreign workers in the U.S. are controversial for a variety of reasons, but economics professor Gaurav Khanna says those who see only the negative effects mistakenly believe that migration is a zero-sum game.
When immigrants come, they take away jobs, so there must be zero-sum. On the other side, when you think of origin countries, the countries that send immigrants, right, there's this conception that it's a zero-sum game in the sense that you're losing kind of the brightest minds when these folks leave the country.
But he says when you look at the data, it's clear that there are not only winners and losers when students and workers migrate to the U.S. The situation is much more nuanced. In fact, Khanna suggests it's a win-win situation even as it defies many hopes and expectations. Consider the example of an Indian native trained in science and engineering who dreams of getting a high-paying job in Silicon Valley. But their work visa runs out or they can't get one in the first place.
So they stay back in India. But what that means is that in the long run in India, there is kind of a skilled workforce, right? They're trained, they're ready to work. And so the Indian firms then tap into the skilled workforce and the Indian tech boom takes off.
American firms also see that skilled workforce overseas and they offshore jobs to India. Khanna says a similar situation has occurred with Filipino nurses trained in the U.S.
The U.S. really needed a lot of nurses, and so they made it easier for Filipino nurses to come to the U.S. But what that led to was a lot of women in the Philippines started getting nursing degrees. They started going to medical school.
And those Filipino nurses who did get jobs in the United States, they send a lot of money back home, creating more wealth for their families and more educational options for Filipino kids. So, what has the U.S. gained from the migration and training of skilled foreign workers? Khanna points out what he calls the downstream benefits of the innovations that are tied to foreign workers.
If you think of the car manufacturing sector in Detroit, it's very far from Silicon Valley. But it uses a lot of software, not just in the production process, but our cars actually have software in it. Now, that innovation actually occurred in Silicon Valley by a bunch of Indian immigrants.
Americans of most political stripes see things in this global economy that they don't like. But Khanna argues that the end result is not a brain drain, but a brain gain for those countries involved. The paper he co-authored is published in the journal Science. Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
Tough choices had to be made by the San Diego City Council in recent weeks to fill a substantial budget deficit. A new spending plan now waits for Mayor Todd Gloria's signature. Jacob Ayer has details and tells us why library advocates are looking at the revised budget as a win.
The council voted 7-2 to restore millions of dollars of proposed cuts from Mayor Todd Gloria's May budget. Some of the major issues at stake include the restoration of all funding to parks and recreation centers and Monday hours to 16 of the city's 37 libraries. Sundays will remain closed.
To shutter 37 branches for 2 days in a row would have been really devastating.
The modified budget approval follows dozens of public comments arguing for the restoration of funding for parks and rec centers and libraries. It's a step in the right direction, according to Patrick Stewart. He's CEO of the San Diego Library Foundation.
There is flagship branches in each city council district, and then some additional branches in other parts of the city. It was really important, particularly in under-resourced neighborhoods, that we keep those branches open.
The budget is reliant on new forms of proposed revenue, like charging non-residents to park in Balboa Park and at the San Diego Zoo, and allowing digital advertising and billboards. Independent budget analyst Charles Modica cautioned the council members that their budget has risks.
If we do hit an economic downturn, even if all of these good things, these new revenues come to fruition, we will be faced with the need for immediate cuts.
The mayor's office responded to the council's modified budget in a statement, saying the council added tens of millions of dollars in new spending and changes, many of which raised concerns from both the independent budget analysts and the city attorney's office. And they will closely review the council's amendments to ensure the final budget meets the level of fiscal responsibility this moment demands, especially given the current economic uncertainty and global instability. Regardless of potential changes, Stewart says there needs to be a long-term solution to avoid more budget pitfalls and library closures in coming years.
That's really the goal, is to get through this as quickly as possible and begin getting the rest of the branches open.
Under the city charter, Mayor Todd Gloria has until June 15th to sign the budget into law or exercise his veto authority. The city council has the option to override a veto with 6 votes. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
Sign up for our newsletters to get a list of our most popular stories. Here are some from this week. Advocates urge San Diego leaders to end the city's license plate surveillance system amid the Trump immigration crackdown. The sheriff's office says the district attorney is investigating Poway council member Tony Blaine. And the San Diego Unified School District quietly watered down its graduation requirements. KPBS listeners know the value of radio, not only for news or music, but also for vital information during an emergency. Video journalist Carolyn Corellis takes us to the Pala Reservation and shows us how Pala Res Radio keeps its community informed while keeping its culture alive through the airwaves.
Hey, Res Radio brings some songs of the Southwest on 91.3.
No, the radio station started out as a tool.
Yeah, there's a very large line of fire on the other side. The mission we have is about 30 acres. This is called the Henderson Fire.
About 15 years ago, there were some bad fires in North County, and communication around here was terrible. San Diego had its own fires to deal with, so local media completely ignored North County. Pala was evacuated because there were fires on 2 sides of it. Most people stayed out of town for about 4 days, not realizing they could have come back after about 4 hours. The communication was that poor. So when a window opened up for new radio stations, the tribal council decided to apply for one, hoping to avoid things like that in the future. Well, we'd like to reach all the native communities in San Diego County, if we could, and there are 18 tribes in San Diego County, 18 reservations. Being the Pala radio station and, essentially created for the benefit of tribal members, not just emergency communications, but also, it's a great way to spread and preserve their culture.
The next two songs were recorded at Paula at the Cooper Coach Center.
We've done a number of interviews with elders, some of whom have already passed now. We're certainly glad we were able to talk to them when we could.
When I was doing my Paula Life Past and Present, I started incorporating some of the language into that. And it just kind of built from there. We started incorporating more language to it. We came up with the idea about doing the time checks in the language. I figured it was a way for people to learn how to learn the numbers because you can hear what we say, look at the clock, and you go, oh, okay, that's what they're saying. We started doing our top of the hour has Jemashatahim Kupang, which means we are the people of Kupa, and it says KPRI.
Res Radio 91.3, a service of Kupa Pala Res Indians. KPRI Pala.
Every once in a while you hear something, Nisnumatula Pala'au, which means it's 5 o'clock in Pala. We do that several times an hour, and even if you don't know the language, after a while, you start to associate, okay, well, I know it's this time, now suddenly you're learning numbers in the native language.
We are preserving our culture. We're also sharing our culture. I got a call one time from a lady in our community. She wonders why we don't play more bird songs, local music, like Native American music.
Well, bird songs are a type of native music particular to the Southwest. If you go to the Midwest, upper Midwest areas like that, you're going to hear drumming, powwow music. Powwows, while they happen here, they're not quite so much a Southern California thing. Bird songs are, and they tell stories. So what you hear very often isn't published music, but it's things that either groups have provided us with or we've recorded.
Well, I learned more about bird songs than I never thought I didn't even know I didn't know.
Kind of the spice that tells you you're listening to Res Radio. We're here for an emergency. It may only be 0.1% of the time, but when you need it, you need it. And that's where cell phones fall down. I mean, no matter how good broadband gets, when it hits the fan, everybody's going to be on there and the bandwidth is gone, and you can't get through. You've got a radio, and you've got a way to get emergency information and not worry about whether you're fighting with 10,000 other cell phone users.
When I came to the radio station, I was thinking of it just as a radio station. After I started working here, and with John's prompting, we made it more ours. A lot of beautiful things are done here. I believe we made it like a great piece of art, at least as far as our community is concerned.
You're listening to Songs of the Southwest on Res Radio 91.3.
Once again, that very good story was done by KPBS video journalist Carolyn Corellis. An art gallery in El Cajon that celebrates inclusion and expressions is marking an anniversary milestone with a special show. Jacob Baer says the artwork is 25 years in the making.
Sophie's Gallery is a space for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities to explore their creativity through art. Lauren Heim is a student at the art studio and gallery.
My mosaic fish.
Her favorite work to date is an orange, white, and black fish in the ocean, made of tiny colored tiles. Besides underwater creatures, she also pieces together many other creations.
Like a mosaic cloud, a mailbox.
There might be some people that we work with that don't speak using words.
Erin Perschbacher is the art program manager at Sophie's Gallery.
Maybe they have an inner voice and an inner creativity that gets explored through the artwork that you might not notice or take the time to see unless you're learning about that through the artwork.
Students like Heim learn from professional artists on site. Visual artist Holly Pierce is an art instructor at Sophie's Gallery.
We do a little bit of everything here. Weaving, mosaics, printmaking, painting.
The free classes are 5 days a week, with roughly 200 student artists over that span.
So usually we have, like about 3 or 4 classes going on in here at once. And so the artists come in and they get a choice on what they want to work on.
What started simply as an art program at the nearby St. Madeleine Sophie Center in the 1970s grew into what is now Sophie's Gallery storefront. They're celebrating 25 years of that gallery with a special best of show.
Behind me here, it's kind of all throughout the gallery. We've got pieces that have been sort of in our archives for a while. Maybe an artist didn't finish a piece for a while and it was found and they were able to get those last mosaic tiles on it maybe.
The gallery is also a business. 40% of the art sales goes back to the artist. The rest is used to keep the gallery running. For Haim, making and selling her art is her job.
It really makes me feel proud when people buy my art.
The free best of show at Sophie's Gallery is open for the public to explore through July 7th.
That way, you're on film.
Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
The state budget deadline is Sunday, and California is facing a $12 billion deficit. This week, state lawmakers voted to move forward with Medi-Cal cuts that could affect thousands of immigrants without legal status living in California. KPBS health reporter Heidi DeMarco explains why some critics say even a legislative compromise cuts too much.
In January, Governor Gavin Newsom proposed sweeping changes to Medi-Cal, California's public health program for low-income residents. Among them was freezing new enrollment for immigrants without legal status, cutting dental and long-term care, and charging a $100 monthly premium. On Tuesday, state lawmakers voted to modify parts of Newsom's plan.
Our solutions are absolutely in no way perfect.
The revised plan still freezes new Medi-Cal enrollment for immigrant adults without legal status starting in 2026, but it adds a 6-month grace period, so participants are not automatically kicked out, and it removes the age-out rule, which would have cut off coverage at 26. It lowers the monthly premium to $30 and delays dental cuts by a year. Lawmakers also rejected eliminating long-term and in-home care services.
This really is an attack on immigrant communities at a time when we're seeing really extreme and frightening federal attacks.
Advocates like Karen Savage-Sangwan say the message behind the cut is damaging.
This is telling us that the state government, the governor and legislative leaders are willing to balance California's budget on the backs of hardworking immigrant families.
A statewide poll released this week suggests lawmakers may be out of step with voters. It finds 56% of Californians support keeping Medi-Cal coverage for all low-income residents, regardless of immigration status. More than 24 local doctors and healthcare workers signed a letter this month urging Senator Akilah Weber Pearson to reject the plan. Pediatrician Maya Kumar is one of them.
I'm not a politician. I'm not, a financial expert. So I don't know what the options are, but I just feel like there are some things that should be untouchable, and healthcare should be one of them.
Health advocates are anticipating overwhelmed emergency rooms, rising healthcare costs for everyone, and reversing progress toward health equity.
We're talking about legislating discrimination. The legislature will have to live with the people that will die and the people that will get sicker because of this proposal.
Despite the backlash, Senator Weber voted yes on the modified plan.
None of it was an easy decision. Nothing that we've had to do. People don't go into this to take things away. I know I didn't. Unfortunately, this is where we are right now from a financial standpoint.
The legislature and governor have until June 15th to finalize and pass the budget. Heidi DeMarco, KPBS News.
Tri-City Healthcare District has agreed to have Sharp Healthcare take over its hospital operations and finances. KPBS North County reporter Alexander Nguyen has more on what this means for patients.
Tri-City, like many public healthcare districts in the state, has been plagued with financial issues since the pandemic. The deal with Sharp includes more than $100 million in investments to stabilize Tri-City's financial situation.
It also includes assumption of the debts and liabilities of Tri-City.
Dr. Jima is the CEO of Tri-City. He says the deal means increased access to care for North County residents. Tri-City serves Oceanside, Carlsbad, Vista, and the surrounding areas.
More primary care, specialty care, ambulatory services, delivering care where people want that care, and growth within our region to build what I believe will one day, in short order, be the flagship medical center in all of North County.
Tri-City has been looking for a partner for the past few years. Sharp and UCSD Health both submitted proposals in 2023, and the board chose UCSD. However, the deal fell through last year. This time around, both Sharp and UCSD submitted proposals again, but the board chose Sharp. Scott Evans is the Chief Strategy Officer for Sharp Healthcare.
This time, we really were able to answer all of Tri-City's requests in terms of what they were really looking for.
Tri-City closed its labor and delivery unit 2 years ago. The expectation is that this deal with Sharp will bring that back.
Sharp Healthcare delivers more babies in San Diego than any other healthcare provider, and so it is definitely one of our core strengths.
To be able to provide women's health services in ways that are not accessible currently in North County, to me, is truly one of the most exciting opportunities that lie within this partnership.
Since Sharp is a private healthcare system, the deal will need voters' approval. However, both sides say the vote is at least a year away. But Sharp has experience successfully navigating public-private partnerships. It took over the operations of Grossmont Hospital more than 30 years ago.
It is our East County flagship campus. I think we would be very fortunate to be able to create the same thing in Tri-City.
The two entities will still need to sign a letter of intent that is expected to be completed this week. Alexander Wen, KPBS News.
Before we go, a reminder of what you can find at the KPBS Voter Hub. Voting is underway for the San Diego County District 1 supervisor seat. The district includes Chula Vista, National City, Imperial Beach, and parts of San Diego. KPBS has interviews with the two runoff candidates and other important details. Go to kpbs.org and look for the Voter Hub link on our homepage. We hope you enjoyed this look at KPBS News this week. I'm John Carroll. Thank you so much for joining.